Okay. Um, so I was talking about yeah, the filter option. So if you want to filter, you Control Shift L. I hope I can be heard. Okay, so Control Shift L, or you go to the Data tab, Filter, and you get your filter. Okay. Yeah. So let's look into solutions for assignments. Just you know how we want to make sense out of this data. So I come here to this table and I click on the filter and I have filters. If you drop down, let's say on the tab with the total revenue, if you go to the arrow there and click on you click on it, the drop down option for the filter option, you would see sort from smallest to largest, sort from largest to smallest. So if I go to sort from largest to smallest for revenue, of course, everything is going to apply to everything on the table on the same data set like this category, right? So for revenue, total revenue, I sorted from the largest to the smallest. It doesn't seem to apply to everything. I don't know why this is happening. Okay, I'll just put a table just to troubleshoot. There's a breaker somewhere. Okay, I think I know what's the problem. The formula here. Why? Why? Okay, these are formulas. Let me take off this formula. Just take this out. I'll put it back. Just troubleshooting to know what is the blocker. If it's still the same thing, I don't know why. Hmm. I'll need to figure out why this is giving me an error. It's not, I mean, it's supposed to sort from largest to the smallest. So let's try with this other one. Sorry, I would feedback on why the other is not working. I can't tell right now. So for the item type and number of items sold, if I sort from largest to smallest, this is not working. Why? You know what, I'm just going to close this Excel workbook and open it again. Follow. Um, 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 oops. Um, I've done this. Okay, let me just try again. Add a filter and sort from largest to smallest. Oh, it's still not working. Anyways, I would troubleshoot that and get back to us on the correct solution. I failed to save what I said we were going to be looking at. Wow. Okay, I'll add a new sheet and call it ifs workings, right? And Number one, we want to look at region. Okay, perhaps we just list it all out. I will just take all this up to here, control copy, and I'll paste the transpose. Okay, so first of all, we want to see, sorry, I can't exactly recall what I had put up earlier, the combination, but we'll just walk around it. Um, let's see from our data, let's say your boss, or rather you want to get insights from the number of the total revenue made from, okay, someone's hand is up, believe, yeah. Hi.
Yes, good evening, sir. I think the problems initially were region plus item type,
Oh, perfect, thank you.
region plus sales channel, country plus sales channel plus item type, something like
Believe, I'm not a computer. Oh, okay, so uh, let me
that. Can I
see.
copy and paste it on the chat?
Okay, the first one was region.
Plus
Let me
item
see.
type.
Okay, so rather than type, I'm making use of what we learned. So, oh, this is not gonna work, is it? Okay, yeah,
Don't reach it.
should. Okay, so region plus item type, right? Okay, great.
Yes, sir.
The second one was what? What was the second one?
Region plus sales channel. Region plus sales channel.
Okay. Hello? Yeah. Oh, okay. Region plus sales channel, that should be 5. Okay. Okay. Next one, please.
Yes, sir.
After region and sales channel.
Region plus region plus other priority plus item type.
Okay. Region plus other priority, that is C6, plus item type. Item type is C3. Okay. What's the next?
Fourth one,
Yeah.
country plus sales channel plus item type.
Okay. Okay. And the last, okay, there were 6, I guess. Okay, the next one, please.
Yeah, other priority plus item type.
Other priority. Item type as C4. Okay.
Okay, I think I missed the last one. I can't figure that out.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. So other priority. Yes, I think there was there a country? No, I don't think so. So other priority item type. Maybe we'll just add country. Oh, we'll just leave
Yeah,
it that way. It's fine. It's fine.
okay.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Hold on, hold on, hold on.
Mr. Olive, I think you can mute now so that,
Oh my
yeah,
yes,
thank you. Okay, so that's gone. So let's see. Let's look at our data. Okay, let's say we want to see the region that made the highest revenue in baby food. Okay, so total revenue per region per for baby food. Say for example, um, I think first of all, let's copy our region summary in a summary sheet. I copy the column for region and put in a if working. Control V. I go to data and I remove duplicates. Okay, so the regions. So for reference purpose, I will just maybe copy, since we're looking at item type, I'll copy item types because we would want to explore others too. Okay, before then, we're looking at baby food, right? Let's just use baby food. So we want to see total revenue from baby food. Now we're going to use the SUMIFS function. So equal to SUMIFS. So when you open the SUMIFS, you see sum range, you see criteria range, and you see criteria one dot dot dot. That's and no matter the number of criteria you want to go through. So the first thing is the sum range. Remember, the sum range is what we are summing up. Criteria range is where you have the criteria, and okay, you see criteria range one is the range you have the criteria, the first criteria, and criteria one is the criteria. So let's look at it. So sum ifs, the first thing is the sum range. We go to our sales records and highlight and click on the column with the total revenue since that's what we are trying to find. We put a comma and the next thing is the criteria range. So we're looking for criteria one range. The first criteria we're looking for is the region, right? So we go to region and click on region and put a comma. Then the first criteria. Okay, so our first criteria, if we go to the ifs workings, is the region Australia and Oceania. Click on it. We've got our criteria range one and our first criteria, comma. We put a comma. Now our second criteria, we'll go to the criteria. Our second criteria is the item type, which is baby food. So we go to the criteria range where we have baby foods that is under item type in our sales records. Put a comma and then the criteria that's highlighted here is the second criteria. Our first criteria was the region, and then criteria range was the region range colon A. Our second criteria is baby food in the baby food range. So I'm just going to open a double quote. Remember, when you're entering words, you have to put them in double quotations in a function or a formula, right? So I've entered the second criteria and I close the bracket. Double quotes, close the bracket, and I hit enter. What this does is that it sums up the generated from total revenue generated from baby food in each of these continents, right? So from here we see that total revenue generated from Australia and Oceania is $3 million, Europe $5 million, Sub-Saharan Africa, and we have some regions that didn't make sales for baby food. Have we tried this out? Is it working for us? If you notice, when I work with this formula, I mean, there are different ways to do this. When I use this, I enter the baby food directly because those baby food we're looking for, right? Let's say we want to, okay, we know this is all, let me insert a colon here, insert a row rather, and maybe we just want to find total revenue per, yeah, and I think this is going to be a better way to put it. Total revenue per item type. Total revenue per region per item type. Hope this makes sense. So let's say we want to see the total revenue for food, cereal, office supplies, and fruits. I'll just copy these four items and bring to our ifs working and put them here. So I think so. This is one way to do it. I think for the sake of organization, I could just clear this off. Don't worry, we're going to come back to it and I'll copy this. Let me put this in each row. So if we are looking for, if we're looking out for each of the items, we'll be able to get, you know, the whole idea of analytics is making the work easier. And automation of processes, managing repeated tasks and all that. So rather than enter the names manually, which we can, I'm just going to use these columns. I hope we remember our referencing, our absolute referencing, relative referencing, where we use the dollar sign to lock a column we do not want to move. We want fixed. So yes, so let's try this out. So now we're going to find the total revenue in from each of these four item types per region. So they'll just fall under all these columns, all the cells under them. So I'll just do again SUMIFS, the sum range. The sum range is our total revenue column in the sales record sheet. Click on it, that's our sum range. I put a comma, and then the next thing is the criteria range one. That's the range that has the first criteria, which is our region. So the range is this column A. I put a comma, then criteria one. What is criteria one? Criteria one is the region. So if we come back to our ifs working sheet, we click on this region we want to look up and put a comma. The next thing is criteria range 2. So for our second criteria, which is in this context, baby food, right? Yeah, in this context, baby food. The first thing is criteria range. So which criteria range has the baby food? That's in our sales records. That's item type. We click on it and we put a comma. The next thing we need to do is criteria 2. So what's our criteria 2? Baby food, right? And we are done. We put a comma. We just have 2 criterias and we hit the enter button. If there were 3 criterias, we'll just enter. So here we go. We see that the region here is highlighted, the baby food here is highlighted. So what are we saying? In the region Australia and Oceania, how much revenue was made on baby food? And that's what this gives us. And of course, if we drag down, we are supposed to get the same thing. But we get zeros. Oh my God, what is happening? Now, if we look, we see that there is a disalign. It becomes, when we drag it down, when we drag our formula down, we have zeros. Does it mean this revenues as there was no revenue on this? No, it doesn't mean. Remember when we talked about referencing, right? It's on the same sheet. Talk about relative referencing, absolute referencing. It's going to come in very handy here. In our first calculation, we did a sum if the region is Australia and the product, the item type is baby food, and it worked for us. And then we drag down, we come to the next. We see that what it's doing here is sum if the region is Central America and Caribbean, and the item type is supposed to be baby food, but then since we dragged it down, it has moved to the revenue for Australia and Oceania. And no, that's not what we want. We want this fixed on baby food. So what are we going to do? In our formula, we're going to put absolute referencing for baby food. Why we want it to drag down? When we drag down, it should reflect the regions, but then we want it constant on baby food. So we come here and go to baby food is what? Cell G2, right? So we go to where we have cell G2 here, just click on it and use your control, is it control, depending on what it's for you, function F4, control F4, oops, I think I am, okay. Let's see what works. So you find what works for you. I think for me, oh, for me, just F4 works. I just need to click on F4 and you could also enter it manually. You could put a dollar sign before the G and a dollar sign outside the G. That's basically saying lock it on this cell. When I have locked it and I drag down now, you see it updates. If we look, it is at Central America and Caribbean. It's still referencing the region and baby food. For Europe, the region and baby food, and on, right? So we had to use the absolute referencing to lock this cell. Do I have any questions? Are there questions rather? So far, have we been able to work it out? I'd like to know. Feel free to ask. Are you trying it out? So same goes for cereal and office supplies and fruits. But we don't need to come and start our sum if here again, since it's the same since it's the same parameters. All we just need to do is to apply it to this. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag this down so that the formula applies to the others. But oh no, I'm having zeros again. What is happening? So I come and check, and I see that this is locked in baby food. And that brings us to mixed referencing. Now, when you use absolute referencing has to do with locking a cell completely here. So here, the dollar sign in front of this G means that the colon G is locked, and the dollar sign that is fixed, right? And the dollar sign on in front of 2 means that row 2 is also locked. That is G2. So like, hey, don't move, keep it fixed on this particular column, G and 2. Now say we want it to be able to move when we drag it. If we drag it, we want it to move across the columns, but not down the rows. How do I explain this? Um, Maybe I'll take a pause here and let's revisit our referencing. So I'm sure it was on the same sheet. You should have it on the same sheet. I remember I didn't talk on mixed referencing the other day. I said I was going to get back to it, right? So if we still have this data set, sorry for jumping. I just want people to understand it and not get scared or confused. Or copy this data and we paste here, and we clear um, we clear I don't know how many of us remember this. This was when we're doing the referencing. Okay, at what point do we use if and if? Um, believe we'll get to that, right? So if anyway, a quick answer. If is when you're working on setting a condition based on a single criteria, and ifs is when there are multiple criteria. Like when we're solving here the multiple criteria, that's more than one criteria. Here we're looking at region and item type and all that multiple criteria. That's when we use ifs, count ifs, sum ifs, and then for single criteria we use if without the S. So we would really need to understand referencing for us to have a grasp on what we are doing right now. I feel I should just go through everything again quickly. Let me try and see how that goes. Yeah. So total referencing. So let's look at relative referencing now for this. Sorry to draw us back. We just have to grasp this. Relative referencing, if we want to find out the sum of this, equal the sum, and for all the 4 quarters, we get this, right? The total, and we drag it down. It takes us to, we have the utility, yeah, so it basically sums up every quarterly value, every value for each of the quarters for each of the apps, right? So that's relative referencing. We drag it down and we get values based on each of the roles, each of the products, right? Okay, say we want to see the percentage contribution of each of the apps to the total. Okay, let's sum this up. Let's This is the total of everything. We want to see the percentage contribution of each of the apps to the total, to the grand total. It's going to be equal to, I mean, our ratio, this divided by the total, right? And we hit the enter button. Yeah, gives us 46%. We put it in percentage, and we drag down and we see errors. Why do we see errors? Now this is 110, 1100 rather, divided by the grand total, right? Cool. That gives us the percentage contribution of the game app. When we come here, when we drag down, we see that we have the utility app total contribution over a space. So because we dragged it down, it moved to I8. And same thing happened here. We dragged it down, productivity app, and the total moved to I9. But then here is where our total is, our grand total, and we want it fixed here. That is where absolute referencing comes in. So we come here and we put a dollar sign in front of this, and in front of that, in front of I, which is the colon, and in front of 7, which is the row. So cell I7, we're like, hey, lock this on cell I7, and we hit the enter button. When we drag this down now, we see that it gives us the values. See? So we come to utility app. It is total utility app over the grand total. We come to productivity app, total productivity app over the grand total. This is because we have fixed the grand total on itself, so it's not moving. If there wasn't a dollar sign, it would just keep going to I8, I9, and all as we drag it down. Okay, so that's what we call absolute referencing, when there is a fixed, when there's a lock or a fix on a particular cell. Right. So let's look at mixed referencing. So mixed referencing, when we're talking about mixed referencing, we are looking at we're talking about mixed referencing, we are looking at um, having either we fix a cell, or we fix a row rather, or we fix a column. So it's possible to just fix row row 7 and be dynamic on, and not fix row column I. So let's look at it. Let's say we want to see the percentage contribution of the first quarter to the grand total of each of the apps. Sorry, to the total of each of the apps. That means first quarter contribution to the total for each app. So for the game app, it's going to be equal to first quarter, right, divided by the total. We hit the enter button. Let's put this with a percentage. So we've seen that 9% was the contribution of the game app, so the grand total for the game app. Now let's drag it through to see the others, and we get errors. Why is this so? Let's look at it. You see? So when we dragged it, this other one, the denominator moved from the total to contribution percentage. And then this other one went on, and then we have a bunch of errors. So what could we have done? We could have put an absolute reference on this guy and hit the enter button, right? And we drag it through. And here we get the percentage contribution for each quarter on the game app. Now, let's say we want to drag this down to see if it applies to every other. Let's take a good look. So we see what's happening here. Now we have the, let me see if I can reduce the bit. So if I click on this, we have the utility app divided by the total for the game app. And no, this is not what we want, because we want to see the percentage contribution of the Q1 utility app for its own total, not for the total of game app, right? But then this is because we locked it here. So we locked it here and we dragged it down. The same goes for this other one, the productivity app. They are still making references to the game app's total. No. So what we could have done was to use a mixed referencing okay, so if we drag down, we see that the rows change. The rows are supposed to change because these are different rows, but the column remains column I, right? Total remains in column I, but then we have the totals for each of the apps in column I4, column I5, and column I6 respectively. So since they're all in column I, we don't want to lock column I. Rather, since they're all in column I, but they're in different rows, we want to lock column I, but then we do not want to lock the row. So we're going to take off the $sign from the row in front of the row 4. This is so that when we drag it down, it's going to change to row 5 and row 6. Since it's not locked, it's not fixed on that row. And when we drag it to the left, it still remains on column I. We drag it to the right rather. Once we drag it, since column I is locked, it's going to remain on column I. Normally, if it wasn't locked, once we drag it away, it's going to change, right? It goes to J. As we drag it to the right, it goes and on and on and on, right? But that's not what we want. We want to be able to have it locked on the column, but not on the row. Um, I think if it's hard to grasp, just recap, go over it again and again, and you'll get the mix or the gist about it. So this is where mixed referencing comes into play. Okay. Do I have any questions? Are there questions before we go back and see how it applies here?
Sam will just take 5 minutes break. We'll do them ourselves. Abeg.
Okay, okay, that's fine. So let's try it out in 2 minutes maybe. If there are questions, you could ask why Believe is trying himself. Did we understand it? Was it hard to grasp? How many of us are confused? How many of us got the gist of absolute referencing and cross-referencing and relative referencing and mixed referencing? I'm sure everybody grabs the relative referencing. It's just a drag through. Absolute, yes, locking it, a particular cell. So it just stays on the particular cell like this guy here, dollars.
Okay, got it. Got it. Let's go.
All right, great. Thank you. I take it that you're speaking for everybody because no other person is commenting.
Yeah, me, I'm trying to just do it as you're doing, just to follow.
Okay, sir. Okay, so we come back here. We come back to this place with these plenty formulas. Sorry, I know the formulas are getting scarier, right? Yeah, and we've not seen the half of it. For the so I just start again just so we grasp. Now what we're going to be doing is that we're going to put absolute, not absolute, we're going to put mixed referencing on mix referencing on these columns for these guys. So when we drag through the different columns, the columns are going to change for these ones. But when we yeah, so basically we're just gonna make it dynamic. So when we move from column to column, so we're not gonna log the columns, we're just gonna log the rows. Yeah, so it doesn't move to this when we drag down, it doesn't move to the next rows. But then when we drag it left to right, oh, okay. Let's do this. Okay, so equal the SUMIFS rather, the sum if range. The sum range is the total revenue, comma. The criteria range one is the region. So we click on the region, and the criteria one is in our ifs, the region here. We click on this. Okay. Now our second criteria. The next thing is criteria range two. Our second criteria is baby food, right? So we go to the range where we have the baby food in our sales records. That's the item type. And we put a comma. And then we go to the criteria 2. Criteria 2 is what? Baby food item type. So we click on this. Now remember, we would want to be able to we're going to drag this down. So we have to put a lock on the row so it does not move to the next row and the next row when it comes. So that is to put, and this is G2, right? Column is row G2, cell G2 rather. And we want to put a lock on the on the row. So when we drag it down, it doesn't go down. So we put a dollar sign in front of it. Or we just click on F4 and F4 and F4. So once you keep clicking on F4, the first F4 you click on gives you an absolute referencing. The second locks the row and doesn't lock the colon. The third locks the colon and doesn't lock. It just keeps toggling that way. So you get. So we're locking the row. So I just lock the row and I close the brackets. Hit the enter button. Now if I drag this down, you see that it gives me the total revenue for each of them. Now I want to see the total revenue for cereal in Australia and office supply. I just like drag this all through and it gives me 0. So let's look at our formula to be sure it's correct. Are you seeing what's happening? Now it's giving us a SUMIFS. So we drag it and it's giving us a sum. I mean, our formula changes here. That means we are supposed to lock the region 2. We're supposed to lock the colon for the region. And how do we do this? We come to the first formula here and we come to where we have the criteria, the first criteria, which is F3. This is F3, right? We want to lock it. So we are going to lock, what are we locking? Are we locking the row or the colon? We are locking the colon. We're locking the colon because we do not want, when we drag our formulas to the others, we don't want it to change from colon F to colon G. But when we drag it down, we want it to apply to each of the different rows. So we are locking only the colon, but we are not locking the row. The row rather. And I hit the enter button. I try this again. And it applies. So here we see that it is taking, the formula is applying to region and cereal, applying to region and office supply, applying to region and fruits. So it means there were no sales of these other products. They're not selling products in Australia and Oceania. So I drag down, basically I just highlight these 3 and come to the edge and double tap. It applies to everything. This is so strange. But from our formula, we see that none of these products sold in these places, which is very strange. Oh. I do not trust this. Yes, so yes. So I like that we are trying stuff out now. Now something has happened. When you drag your data, when you drag your formulas to apply to others and all, you have to consider every factor. Now let's look at this. Now in our sales records, the criteria range one is AA, right? And the criteria range 2 is CC. If we look here, we have AA as the region, and then we come here, we have CC as the item type colon. This was perfect for this, but when we drag our formula, when we dragged our formula to apply to the others, you notice here, first of all, oh, even this, the sales records, the sum range was LL, okay? We dragged it and we have our sum range as MM, we have our sales record as BB and DD and all. So we have to also lock each of the parameters, each of the columns each of the everything we are using, everywhere we are taking our data from. Okay, so I'm just going to clear this and we're going to do it step by step and we'll see. So some ifs, sum range is what? So we go to our sales records to get our total sales revenue. This is colon LL. When we click on colon LL, the first thing we do is, the next thing we do rather is F4 to lock it. If you look here, there is a dollar sign in front of L and that dollar sign in front of L. So we're trying to tell it to stay fixed on colon L, okay? We put a comma, that's the sum range. The next is the criteria range. The first criteria range is the region. I click on the colon and I do the F4 to lock both cells. Okay. So when we drag it, it does not move from these regions, these colons. Okay. That's criteria range one, comma. The next thing is the criteria one. I hope you can hear me. I think you can.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. Sorry for that break. Can't is yes we can. Oh great. Thank you. Okay. So equal to sum if, right? Sum if the sum range. So sum range is the total revenue and F4 locks it. A dollar sign before each of the colon alphabets. So put a comma. The next is the criteria one range, that is the region, and I put an F4 to lock it. The comma. The next is the criteria one, and that's the region. Now we had said for the region, as for this region here, we would want to be able to drag it down and to move. So we want the rows to move, but then we want the column to be constant. So we're going to put a lock on the column and not the row. Okay. So we put a comma. The next is the criteria range 2, the range that has the second criteria, which is the baby food and all that, the item type. So we go to our sales records and we click on, okay, we can move this away. We click on this and use the F4 to lock it, comma, and the next is the criteria 2. And we come here and click on the baby food, and so for the baby food, we want to be able to drag it from left to right and changes, but we want it to, so we want to be able to move the columns but not the rows. So we're going to lock the row and leave the column unlocked. So we're locking 2, which is the row 2, and leaving G unlocked. So that's our criteria 2. And when we are done with that, we close our bracket and hit the enter button. Now we can drag it across board. And highlight everything, drag it down, and we have the total revenue for these products. So I just want to say, these ifs functions, the count ifs and sum ifs and all that, they are the trickiest and the ones that require um, the utmost care and attention, right? But I also want to assure you that once you're able to grasp this, every other thing is easy. The, this in this curriculum is like the toughest part of it. Every other thing is easier, should be easier for you. So once you're able to grasp this, you are good to go. Any questions, please? I'm taking no questions as this one is strong. I mean, a lot of people have run away. Okay, let's try this out. As a matter of fact, I would not want to dig in so deep. I want us to look into this. I'm just going to do one more. I'm going to do one, this time around using the sales channels. And then the rest would be take home. The rest would be an assignment for you to try out. And when we come on Thursday, we'll review and see how we fared. Okay? Um, so no questions yet, Spa. Please ensure that when you're doing when you're putting the items here, the names of the products, they should be exactly as it is, like these regions, the baby food. The spelling should be exactly as it is in the item type, okay? Because if there is a space, you're going to get an error. If there is any alteration to anything, if it supplies and you put only one P, it's not going to work for you. It has to be exact. Yeah. Okay. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this here. Let me give an extra space, some more space. Okay, paste values. So, uh, sales channel. Okay. This is the region. So our sales channels, we have two. If you notice, I'm copying like this. So I just want to get the way it is exactly. So I just transpose and yeah, have offline and online. So what we're trying to do is count if it is this, sum if it is this region and the sales came from offline and online. We want to see which channel, which sales channel made the highest sales per region. Okay? Yeah. So equal the sum if sum if range is total revenue. I lock it with F4, comma. Criteria range one is the region. Okay, I lock it. F4, comma. Criteria one is the region here, Australian Oceania. I put it here. I would want to drag down. I would want the rows to move, but I wouldn't want the columns to move. So I'm going to lock just the column. That's M. I put a comma, and the next is the second criteria, which is criteria range, which is the sales channel. So I'd go to sales record. Sales channel is column D. Click on it, and I put F4. I lock it, and I put a comma, and the next is the criteria 2, which is offline. I would want to drag it so I could get the online. So, but then I don't want the rows to change. So I'm going to lock the row but not the colon. And then I put my brackets. I close it. Okay, and I hit the enter button. I drag it to the right and double click, change the format to currency, and here we go. This gives us an insight of what sales were made from the different in the different continents through the different sales channels. Okay, any questions? Let's try it out. Right up here. Okay. Yes, you need to watch it over and over again. Okay, I'm gonna just give a okay, someone wants to say something. Believe?
So, yeah, can we take it one more time? Just one. This last one, babe.
Okay, okay. I think you can mute. Um Notes is being recorded to the voice. I'm just gonna clear this and do it again. So I want to find the total revenue for each region per different sales
Babe,
channels.
babe.
Believe you're not muted. Okay. So you got the SUMIFS. The first is the sum range, which is the total revenue, F4 to lock it, and we put a comma to criteria range 1 is the region. Click on the region and F4 to lock it. We put a comma and the first is the criteria. That's the criteria 1 in the criteria range 1. That's the region here. And we want a situation where when we drag the formula down, it applies to others. So the rows are going to change, but we don't want the colon to change, colon M to change. So for colon M, so for this, we're going to lock the colon, but we don't lock the row. So we put a dollar sign in front of the M and not in front of the 3, which is the row. Then the comma, the next is the criteria range 2. The criteria range 2 is the sales channel. So we'll go to the sales records and click on the column with sales channel, F4 to lock it. Then a comma, we go to summary sheet. And then the next is the criteria 2, the second criteria, that's offline. So we click on offline and we want to be able to move it left, but we don't want the rows to change. So we'll just lock only the row, but not the colon. So a dollar sign in 2, but not in M. And we close the brackets. And there we go. We drag it, and there we have it. Okay. So in a quick look in, we can see that North America had 0 sales from the online sales channel. That means more people preferred, or the sales were only done offline. That's some insights. Okay. Now we're gonna stop here for today so that you're not jam-packed with a whole lot. But I'm just going to drop a a quick visualization tool for everybody in case you want to quickly get insights from data. Now, in the Home tab, there is something called, if you look at under Styles, conditional formatting, right? Now, I want to color code this in such a way that we could see the color trends based on, I mean, green means high, red means low, anyhow I want to put it. First of all, I highlight these values. I go to the Home tab and then conditional formatting. Under the conditional formatting, I see color scales. And the first thing I see is green to red, and I click on it. This highlights everything. So I could quickly see that the thick reds, these are the lowest values in the whole of this data set. And I see this deep green here. So I could quickly deduce that, oh, the highest sales were made in the region sub-Saharan Africa from their offline sales, right? And I could quickly also see, oh, Europe was next, and all, and all, and all, and all. Okay, did we get that? Any questions?